Hi, Todd here from Urban Sound Studio, and today we're taking a look at the flagship interface from Audient, the iD48. Now, to me, this is the ultimate hybrid tracking and mixing interface because it allows you to work in different modes so that you're not required to use a patchbay to integrate your analog gear, and you also don't have to cannibalize inputs and outputs on your interface. We'll take a look at some sound examples and some workflow tips in a bit, but let's get started with some of the basics that the interface has to offer. The front of the iD48 is pretty simple. 8 level knobs for your 8 inputs, metering of the master output, a monitor level knob, and then your 2 headphone outputs. One thing I almost missed at first is that the master monitor level knob also acts as a power on-off button when you hold it down. 2 1/4-inch jacks on the front make connection of high-impedance instruments super easy. Each channel has the ability to set the level from the front as well as enable phantom power. The software ID mixer gives you the ability to balance your monitor mix of your inputs, but also set a high-pass filter, invert polarity, set a pad for hot signals, or use a boost for lower signals. You can also set the pan of each channel when you're monitoring during the tracking process. Now we are currently looking at QA as the monitor source, but the panel on the right allows us to flip through the master monitor mix and 4 different cues very quickly. 4 buttons on the right allow you to toggle between a second set of speakers, use a talkback, and then there are 2 assignable buttons. I have my first button assigned to mono so I could check my mix of mono. The headphone amp is very solid, but the routing is super important to set up. Here, I'm going to have outputs 1, 2 be my main mix, but 3, 4 will go to my second set of speakers. My 2 headphone outputs will use QA and B, so I can set up 2 different mixes. Also, if you're not using the DB25 for inserts, you can use them to feed headphone distribution and cue systems. Digital ADAT outputs can also feed headphone distribution, such as this hearback system, so that I can have 4 cue mixes for artists. Remember that talkback button? Well, that's also assignable. If I want to set up an external device and want to use something such as a USB microphone or computer mic, I can. Note that if you have a talkback assigned, it could take up one of the channels when we get to mixing with outboard gear. This isn't a problem since you wouldn't need a talkback at that point, but make sure to turn off that input to maximize your I/O settings. Now let's look at the back of the unit. There are 8 combo inputs on the back that accept XLR or 1/4-inch. And of course, you can expand up to 2 additional units via ADAT. This gives you additional inputs and outputs, and you could use something such as the Audient ASP880 or ASP800, which would give you a total of up to 24 channels. Now let's see how to set up the iD48 with DB25 cables to get our inserts up and running. Now, if you're new to DB25 cables, don't be afraid of them. They have a tremendous amount of flexibility and a bunch of different configurations you can use. I will caution you though, they can get expensive, so make sure to budget them when looking at a new interface. These cables are really as easy as taking the output of the interface, pushing in the D-sub connector, and then using your fingers to tighten the screws. I'll do the same with the inputs. Now I just connect it to my analog gear. It doesn't matter if you're using 1/4-inch TRS or XLR cables. I should point out that the iD48 has dedicated 1/4-inch outputs for the main monitors as well as the alt monitors, so you don't need to take up one of the inserts to route audio to your speakers. Okay, now it's time for the fun part. Let's see how we could use the insert points on the iD48 to connect our outboard gear without the use of a patch bay. Before we get started, there are basically 2 modes that are important to understand. There's the DAW analog, which reserves 2 banks of 8 optical outputs. And then there's the DAW ADAT mode, where your optical channels are then duplicates to the analog ones. The first thing I want to do is take my Beta 58 microphone and connect it to input 1 and explore the mic mode. As I begin talking into the mic, we see signal coming in. We can adjust the level from the front, as mentioned earlier, and we can select to have a boost, which is great for lower output microphones. It eliminates the need for a cloud lifter with microphones such as an SM7B or an RE20. Now at this point, we're ready to record. However, by switching to a different ADC path, such as mic insert, we can now use the iD48's preamp to drive the mic and then run directly into our first unit connected to the inserts. In this case, it's a Rupert Neve Designs 542 tape emulator, which is great to add some character while recording. You can see the signal coming into the 500 series unit. And of course, because of this, we have the ability to use outboard hardware while tracking without the need for a patch bay. Just to review that idea again, the mic goes into channel 1, gets its gain from the internal preamps, and then goes through the 500 series rack, back up to the ID48, and then gets converted and sent to your DAW. Now this is super cool because we can monitor all of this with super low latency. Now that was how to use the inserts while tracking, but let's see how to use the inserts while mixing. First, I want to convert each of my inputs to stereo and then set them all to ADC direct mode so we could send signal from the DAW to outboard gear. Let's hit play and hear our in-the-box mix. See the signal coming in on DAW 1-2? Well, this is our DAW playback. It's what we expect. Let's focus on just the drums and see how to impart some analog magic. I'm going to use the I/O plugin to send my audio to my hardware and then return it to the DAW with latency compensation. I will not use outputs 1 through 8 as they're reserved for monitoring. Instead, since we're set up with DAW ADAT mode, I'll use 9 through 16 to send signal out. So let's output the drums on 9-10, but we're going to return them via inputs 1-2. I just need to hit ping and we hear a little blip to calculate the latency compensation. Now, when I hit play, we see audio come through the tape emulator module. This sounds good, but it's not what I want. Let's see how easy it is to switch to another module. I'll set the outputs to 11-12 and then the inputs on 3-4. My latency should be the same, but let's ping it again just to check. Note that in Logic, sometimes you need to toggle the solo button and then hit ping again for it to work properly. Now let's do the same with our bass. This time I'll run out 13-14 and return to 5-6. I want to run into my stereo effect compressor for a little leveling and distortion. Now that's the perfect amount of edge. For my synth tracks, I put them into one folder or track stack. This is perfect for the tape emulator to give a little character. I'll output to 9-10 and then input on 1-2. Perfect. It adds a little bit of extra sheen. Up last, I have a track stack for all of my vocals. This time, I gang together a compressor and EQ in series. I'll run out 15-16 and return on 7-8. A little SSL compression keeps things under control. And then a little SSL EQ helps to open up the top. Let's remove some of those nasal mids. we'll add a little bit of heft in the low end. Now let's bring in the other instruments. As you can see, I can now mix after going through the hardware. And if we look at the ID mixer, this is all coming through the DAW-12 channel. Let's see how this compares before and after. It's a huge improvement. Now this is great, but let's try a totally different workflow. I'll delete the I/O plugins and create 4 new tracks. I'll call them vocal print, chord print, bass print, and drum print. Basically, these are going to be my stem prints. Let's make sure they're all in stereo. We need to assign inputs to each of these print tracks so we can print new stems. Now, instead of monitoring through DAW-12, I want to monitor the 4 stereo input pairs. First, I need to assign my original tracks to output to the proper channel so they could go to the hardware and then return to the new print stem tracks. So vocals, 15-16, chords, 9-10, bass, 13-14, drums, 11-12. Now I record on my stem tracks and hit record. If I go back to my ID mixer, we can monitor all of the audio that's being tracked to our new stem tracks after going through the analog hardware. And if we zoom in, we can see perfect stem prints. Let's solo our new stem prints. Since these are going to play back in the box, I'll solo my DAW-12 in the mixer and then start playback. Now I can balance these stems with the analog hardware committed to them. There's one last workflow I should mention, which is that you can also route all of your tracks to just a single pair of analog outputs, and this is great for anyone who wants to process a full mix with a master bus processor. The idea is the same. Just output every one of your tracks to the same analog output, create a new stereo audio track, and then route your audio back to print a master bus print through some analog gear and create a final analog mix of your song. Thanks for watching. If you're new to integrating outboard gear into your workflow, make sure to check out some of my other videos on analog summing, and I also did a mix breakdown that shows some of my other workflows. Those are great places to start. In the meantime, leave some comments in the chat below about your thoughts on the ID48, and as always, please help support the channel by liking the video and hitting subscribe.